What is up, everybody? Welcome back to RC's Gateway to Comics. Today, we are going to be discussing abandoned projects and why it's okay to abandon them sometimes. Now, this does not mean I'm referring to completed projects. This is projects that a creator may be like halfway through and then just realizes this is not going to work. And I am a perfect example of one of those creators. Now, this is from a time far before I started doing YouTube and back whenever I was actually still in college. There's several projects that I have completely abandoned because they were not turning out the way that I envisioned them. Now, before you start lighting torches and getting the pitchforks out, these were not projects that were being released to the public. These were not crowdfunded projects. They were just projects that I was working on personally. So those are the only cons I'm referring to. Whenever projects are out in the public space, they need to be put out for the customer. I'm referring to ones that are still in the creative process. So, several of the projects were writing projects. I had this grand idea of writing a fiction trilogy about a misunderstood college student who is a psychopath and is given fire powers by a freak accident by a corrupt organization, and he is trying to take down this said organization. That project is this right here. And you will never see a page of this released on the internet because I am done working on this project. Because as I was working on the second book, I had the first one completely written. It took me like a year because I was in college and working on studies and all of that stuff. I had this book done and I was a couple chapters into the second one, and I hit a snag, and I stopped working on the book. And the passion for that project died. And then I looked back at the first book, and I was like, what in the hell did I just write? This makes no sense, and how am I going to move forward with it? Because this is not good. And then I decided to drop it because it hadn't been released yet. I was nowhere close to the point of revising anything, and it was still all in the rough draft phases. Plus, something that would actually become my passion project for the next several years up until even now started, and that is my Red Sky series. My pirate fiction story about a pirate captain trying to gain the most notoriety on the seven seas, all the while fighting against magical creatures, legendary pirates, and also trying to win the heart of the daughter of a commodore. This all took precedence, and as you can see, this has been released to the public because I wanted to see this project through. As of right now, there are 5 books in that series, with more to come in the future years. And that project is one that I've decided to stick with because I find that my passion is still there for it. I can build upon the story, make it grow, make it all make sense, and still be a fun ride for anyone who decides to read it. Go and check it out on Amazon and Kindle. But this story, which I had at the time as a working title called Controlling Fire, God, that sounded like a stupid name for a story, that has died entirely. And I will never be revisiting it because I do not like it. It's amazing how ideas can change as time goes on. And you can see the problems that you had with all of that creative process and seeing all of the stuff that sticks out now that should have been completely like blasting you in the face with like high beams and saying, there's a problem with this, you might want to change it. Those are okay to abandon. Now, this was not the only one that I abandoned during my college years. I was a graphic design major in college. And one of the things that we had to do as a graphic design class was to put on a final exhibition of sorts. And one of my grandiose ideas was to make a comic book. Now, as you can see, I am holding no such comic book in my hands because I don't have a comic book. But I had it in my head that I was going to make a comic book in a semester because I was a dumbass. So I had put all of my time into creating characters for this story, basing it around myself, my college friends, and just some weird hijinks that we had, and turning us into superheroes and shit like that. And this shows how far I've gone in my stupidity before. And I got a Wacom tablet. My first tablet. First time doing digital art. Because beforehand I was just making shit up with a mouse on a keyboard. That was stupid of me. Before I got my iPad, thankfully. And I got Manga Studio 5, I think it was called back at the time. And sit down in the library to use this Wacom. And I get a couple pages into just the layout phase. And I say to myself, after sitting there for a couple hours and not getting really much done, shit, I'm not going to be able to do this. So what I ended up doing with that was just making mock-up comic covers. Like, if I was going to be putting out a comic story, then this is what it would look like. But I didn't have a full comic because I did not understand jack shit about making a comic. And for that reason, that project was abandoned almost immediately after I started the art phase. And this is one of the reasons why I'm actually making this channel the way that it is. And it's RC's Gateway to Comics. And that was my start in comics, was an absolute freaking failure because I knew nothing. And at that same time, I was still getting into like following comic artists on Twitter and YouTube and learning the various different processes behind it. And I was nowhere close to being able to put out anything. So why I thought I was going to be able to put out a comic, I have no idea. Now I know the processes behind all of this. I know the line work, the inking, the flat colors, the shadows and highlights and all that sort of shit. Back then, I had no idea about that. So for that reason, totally abandoned that project. Most likely will not be coming out anytime soon because I don't really have the desire to do that. And if you are in a similar situation, again, So long as you don't have like an active crowdfunding project going, then I think it's okay for you to abandon a project. Because if you're not feeling like the project is going to be going anywhere, then people are going to pick up on that if you try and push it. If I had tried to put out Controlling Fire as a trilogy, and I tried to market it as like this, the next superhero comic, or like the next super anti-hero comic or story, or yeah, it was a story, then people would be able to pick up that I don't really have my full passion behind this. And that's not something you want to have the audience see if you're the creator. You want to have your passion behind your work. And whenever you have that passion going for you, then people are going to pick up on it. If you have, like, one thing that I see a lot with comic creators is whenever they get onto a live stream and they really believe in their work. You'll see it with Ethan Van Sciver. You'll see it with John Malin. You'll see it with Dave Brank of Genuine Comics. You'll see it with a ton of people. You'll see it with X53 Studios and their various properties like Arachna. You'll see it with Josh Howard with his T-Bird and Throttle campaigns. All these creators put their all behind these projects, and you feel it whenever they're advertising. You know that they're advertising, but you can't help but feel that energy emanating off of them. And imagine if actually there's actually a very good example of that right now. You have Ethan Van Sciver with Cyberfrog, and you have Ethan Van Sciver with Rainbow the Brute. You'll see that all of his passion is with Cyberfrog, because Cyberfrog is it is his bread and butter. He loves that character. He's pushing it with all of his might. He is making millions off of it. That is where his heart is. And that's the character that I think is done really well. Now, you also have Ethan Van Sciver and Rainbow the Brute. You don't really hear much about Rainbow the Brute anymore. You only hear about Cyberfrog. Most of his passion is behind Cyberfrog. And Rainbow the Brute is sort of fallen by the wayside. Still being worked on, still in the background. You may occasionally see some things like John Malin's Black Riding Hood and other art pieces that accompany that campaign. But you don't really hear much about it or any sort of like sequel campaigns for it, because the passion's not really there for it. That is something that you can see is not going to be as successful as the projects that are really being pushed. For me, the stuff that I would be really pushing is my books. And this is one of the reasons why I started doing writing tutorials and stuff that would be helpful to writers, because I am primarily a writer. I enjoy art and I can do art, and I'm going to be doing art tutorials at some point, but writing is where I got started. Writing is where I'm passionate. Don't get me wrong, I'm passionate about art too, but writing is where I got started. And I have 5 books already out in a field that I am passionate about. Pirates, fiction, magic, that sort of stuff. It's all stuff that it is what I absolutely love to be working in. And it's something that I want to continue to do. So whenever you don't feel passion for a project, then that just sucks the life out of you. It saps any creative feeling from you, and it makes you not want to continue. That is death for any sort of creativity. And if you're a creative person, then you know how that feels. It's gut-wrenching. So, for that reason, I say that it is okay to take a machete to those projects that you are not passionate about, you don't want to continue, and say, screw it. I'm going to move on to something that actually gets my blood flowing, gets my passions excited, and makes me want to go out and conquer the world with this creative aspiration that I have. Because if you don't do that, then you're just gonna wallow in sadness and just be like, you know what, I don't feel like doing anything today because I'm just doing something that I'm just flying by the seat of my pants, and I don't really care what's going on. When's my next beer? And you don't want to do that. So, what are you guys' thoughts on creators abandoning projects whenever they're just not really feeling it? Again, this is something that is prior to it being released to the public. If you're putting in a lot of work to create something, and then you're just like, I'm not really feeling it, and there's a good reason for it. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments section below. Have any of you guys had similar experiences where you have abandoned a project? And do you think you will be revisiting that project? I'm curious to hear that also down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and also subscribe to this channel for more writing talk, art stuff to come in the future, and also looks at comic books, like the comic reviews that I've done. The more people that we have seeing this content, the more that we're going to be able to grow creatively and also grow the independent comic industry. So, thank you guys all for watching, and I will see all of you in the next video. Peace out.